Now, generally speaking, most movies maintain a pretty consistent tone throughout. You know what you're getting from the jump, and filmmakers stick to that vibe until the very end. But every so often, directors decide to toy with viewer expectations and deliver a scene that, whilst being awesome, just comes completely out of left field and blindsides everybody. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is Whatculture.com, and these are 10 amazing movie scenes that came totally out of nowhere. Number 10. Everybody Goes to Jail. Clerks 2. Clerks 2 is, for the most part, a more of the same sequel which revels in the same dick and fart jokes and pop culture references that made the original comedy such a hit. It does have spicings of seriousness though, what with Dante pondering his romantic future and looming fatherhood, and considering the value of his increasingly strained friendship with Randall. But the most jarring tonal 180 arrives at the conclusion of the infamous Donkey Show sequence, in which Randall pays for a bestiality show as a going-away present for Dante. The police end up arriving on the scene and send Dante, Randall, Jay, and Silent Bob to jail for their participation in the illegal escapade. Now, it sounds totally hilarious and on brand for the series, right? Except what follows is one of the most unexpectedly moving and dramatically brilliant scenes that Kevin Smith has ever cooked up. The 10-minute jail scene sees Dante venting his frustrations with life at Randall, all the while Randall lets his guard slip and confirms just how much he actually loves his friend. Given that the original Clerks was rightly dinged for its amateuristic performances, it is shocking to see just how brilliant this pair are in this scene, bringing enormous gravitas to a fraying friendship at a critical moment. Number 9. The Dance. Ex Machina. Midway through Alex Garland's terrific sci-fi thriller Ex Machina, Caleb has a tense interaction with tech CEO Nathan, who both breaks and exacerbates said tension in the most surprisingly deranged manner possible. Nathan promptly informs Caleb that he's wasting his time talking to Nathan's android servant and insists he's better off dancing with her instead. At this point, Nathan flips a switch in the room and music starts blaring out while the room is bathed in funky neon lights. Immediately, Kyoko starts dancing and Nathan joins in with her in eerily synchronized fashion, all the while Caleb and we, the audience, are left stunned at the bizarre sight that we're seeing. Nathan even throws in a few hilarious quips such as, "After a long day of Turing tests, you've got to unwind," and "I'm gonna tear up the dance floor, dude." It's a funny, surreal scene on the surface, but of course it darkly demonstrates the level of control that Nathan has over his android companions. The first time that you watch it, it's like a bucket of cold water to the face, surprising and deeply confusing. Number 8. Tool's Monologue. The Expendables. Nobody expects great acting or genuine pathos from an Expendables movie of all things, yet Mickey Rourke, fresh off of an Oscar nomination for The Wrestler, gave 110% regardless of his small role. In the action-star team-up movie, Rourke plays Tool, a tattoo expert and close friend of Barney Ross, who actually stays out of the action entirely. In a mid-film chit-chat, though, Tool stops the film dead in its tracks by recounting a haunting story from a mission he undertook with Barney in Bosnia, where in the middle of a massacre he glimpsed a woman on the bridge and, knowing that she was about to jump off, did nothing to help her. It's a phenomenal monologue expertly delivered by Rourke, and ultimately feels like it has no business being in an Expendables movie. Now, a lesser director would have just cut the scene for disrupting the film's overall mood and tone, yet Stallone smartly kept it in and gave audiences a mini-dramatic treat completely out of nowhere. Number 7. Bilbo Freaks Out. The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Even though the Lord of the Rings movies certainly have their intense and even unsettling moments, who would have ever expected them to boast a jump scare to rival even the greatest horror film? In The Fellowship of the Ring, Bilbo wants to take one last look at the One Ring when he meets Frodo in Rivendell, but just as Frodo acquiesces, the kindly warm Bilbo suddenly fleetingly transforms into a bug-eyed, razor-toothed creature not unlike Gollum. It's an incredible jump scare that feels completely earned because it so powerfully conveys the soul-searing, never-ending impact of possessing the ring, as Frodo then begins his journey. It's at once completely terrifying and devastatingly sad, knowing the effect that the ring continues to have on Bilbo and the enormous force of will that he must surely exert to keep it at bay. Given that Peter Jackson cut his teeth in the horror genre, it's perhaps all too fitting that he provided a bite-sized homage to his origins in this fantastic moment. Number 6. The Age of Aquarius, the 40-year-old version. Though it isn't remotely surprising to anyone that Judd Apatow's the 40-year-old version climaxes with protagonist Andy finally losing his virginity to his partner Trish, what follows is most unexpected indeed. Trish then asks Andy, "So how was it for you?" And rather than simply cut to black on that note, Apatow decides to have Andy break out into a sweaty, spirited rendition of the Fifth Dimension's iconic pop hit Aquarius / Let the Sun Shine In. The hilariously prolonged sequence includes lengthy music video-style cutaways to Andy, Trish, and the film's other characters frolicking in a field while singing the song's lyrics, leading directly into the end credits. It's the last thing that anyone could have anticipated for the movie's final scene, and yet is so perfect in encapsulating Andy's euphoria at finally doing the deed. There was nowhere for the film to go after this, and so Apatow was smart to cut the segue straight into the end credits. Number 5. The Spider Enemy. The shocking ending to Denis Villeneuve's Enemy is proof perfect that a scene can be tremendously effective even if you don't completely understand it. The film, in which a man, Adam, chases down his doppelganger, concludes in a most mind-melting fashion when Adam goes to the bedroom to talk to his wife Helen, only to find a gigantic tarantula curled up in the back corner of the room. The end. Even with the abundance of spider-like imagery throughout the film, this ending comes as a massive surprise to viewers, given that it represents such a surreal break with the comparative reality of the rest of the movie. Yet it's also a brilliant cinematic scare that doesn't need to rely on loud tension chords, because the visceral quality of the image is so innately terrifying to most people. Enemy is a great movie overall, and viewers have a bevy of interpretations for the ending's true meaning, but wherever you land on it, it's a terrific closing image that nobody saw coming. Number 4. The Volleyball Game, Top Gun. For all of the machismo and military fetishism on display, it's hilarious that the scene even casual Top Gun viewers will always remember is the damn volleyball scene that comes completely out of nowhere. At the end of the first act, director Tony Scott suddenly cuts to the focal pilots playing a spirited game of shirtless volleyball, scored to Kenny Loggins playing with the boys. It doesn't do much beyond offer up an opportunity for the audience to oogle the shimmering bodies of Tom Cruise, Val Kilmer, and Rick Rossovich in the scorching sun. And honestly, does it need to? It's the most iconic scene in the movie for a reason. It's visually stunning and energetic, while also offering a playful break from the focal drama and giving the LGBTQ+ community a defining moment of cinematic queerness. Top Gun would have been just fine without this scene, which actually did nothing to progress the central story, but it certainly helped endear the audience to these characters regardless. And to think, Scott almost got fired by Paramount for spending an entire day shooting it. Number 3. The Bear Man BJ, The Shining. Even after accepting Stanley Kubrick's The Shining as a deeply twisted horror film with a fine penchant for indulging in very weird stuff, a lot of people probably draw the line at the Bear Man blowjob scene. Later in the film, a terrorized Wendy is skulking around the Overlook Hotel when she comes across an open room where a man in a bear suit is performing fellatio on another man. The moment, lasting barely 10 seconds of the 146-minute film, is never lent any immediate context in the movie itself, beyond the fact that it compounds Wendy's distress and leaves the audience wondering what the hell they just saw. Fans have their interpretation for what it could possibly mean, but that Kubrick could insert an image into his film so filled with unintentionally comedic potential, yet made it one of the most strikingly unnerving in the entire movie, is only further testament to his twisted genius. It feels like something we're not supposed to see, that was spliced into the film by a vindictive projectionist, yet it only further enhances the film's suffocatingly discomforting atmosphere. Number 2. Chad gets shot in the head, burn after reading. The Coen brothers' black comedy Burn After Reading is a terrifically entertaining screwball farce in which two dim-witted gym employees, Chad and Linda, inadvertently come into possession of a disc containing sensitive CIA information and promptly attempt to sell it. For the first 2/3 of the movie's runtime, the point seems to be that all the focal players and the various intelligence employees are so overpoweringly incompetent that everybody will probably remain alive and kicking by the film's end. But that changes drastically when Chad sneaks into the home of former CIA analyst Osborne Cox in order to acquire more information about him, all while paranoid US Marshal Harry Pfaffer also searches the house. Eventually, Harry discovers Chad hiding in a closet, and upon being startled, immediately opens fire at a smiling Chad, painting the closet with his brains. The juxtaposition of Chad's smiling face with the brutal gunshot coming moments later, and the inherent silliness of the scene with its violent outcome, feels so insanely out of left field, even from the filmmakers who brought us No Country for Old Men a mere year earlier. And number 1, Pigfuck, The Master. Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master may be a continually unpredictable piece of work from start to finish, but even so, who expected a mid-film utterance of the profoundly rare insult, pig f***? During one of the meetings of the cause, the Scientology-like organization founded by Lancaster Dodd is challenged on many of his spurious claims by a man named John Moore. Throughout their 5-minute confrontation, Dodd becomes increasingly frazzled by Moore shooting holes through his paper-thin logic, and when Moore points out that Dodd won't defend his beliefs in a rational way, Dodd realizes that he's got nothing left to fire back, and so, while stumbling over his words, he says, "If you already know the answers to your questions, then why ask, pig f***?" At the end of a serious-minded, heated debate, it is a moment that both enhances the tension and breaks it with unexpected hilarity. It both reveals the fragility of Dodd's belief and gives the audience permission to laugh at something that they just didn't see coming. Now granted, it's an amazing scene regardless of the outburst, yet by improvising this insult during shooting, Hoffman again confirmed himself to be one of the shrewdest and most conscientious actors of his generation, or perhaps any.